The thing that interests me very much is to see people of different eras so that you can compare them.
Miller gets his back foot slightly side on and he's got a good position there, but he opens up very quickly.
He made us sing in the dressing room. He said, "Come on now, we want some singing here."
I knew the team was coming up, and I said to my mother, I said, I'm going for a game of golf. I remember going out to bat, and it was like when they whisper, it sounded like a bunch of beads coming across the field.
Everybody. The weather this morning reminds me something of Brisbane instead of good old England. I have now great pleasure in introducing to you the members of the 17th Australian 11. First of all, Mr. Vic Richardson, our vice captain. Mr. Richardson, one of our forcing batsmen and also a brilliant field. He is the captain of the South Australian team and also one of our selectors on this trip. The second member I wish to introduce to you, Mr. Kippax, the captain of the New South Wales cricket team. Alan Kippax has been a most consistent batsman throughout this tour. Mr. Ponsford, who comes from my own state, Victoria, has had wonderful success during the tour, averaging well over 50 in the test matches, and he put up a very, very fine effort in the final test match at the Oval, in which he made 110. The next, Mr. Grimmett, Clary Grimmett from South Australia, our slow bowler and whom we consider the best slow bowler in the world today. Dan McCabe, who has represented us in all 5 test matches, comes from New South Wales, a fine all-rounder, a forcing batsman, a very good field, and is also a very useful medium-pace bowler. Don Bradman from New South Wales. He has broken many existing or previous existing records in the cricket world with the bat on this tour, and he at least must go back to Australia feeling quite satisfied with this, his first tour in the old land.
That was the Australian team that won back the Ashes in England in 1930. Filmmaking actually started in Australia in 1896, but in those days film was very expensive. It wasn't usually copied. It was just used until it wore out or fell apart. And then when talking film started in the 1920s, the old silent film was thought to be worthless, and a lot of it was thrown out or some of it was burnt. So up until 1930, the coverage is patchy. But after 1930, there's good coverage of the major players and the major events. The first film of Australian cricket goes back to 1905, when Joe Darling's team was filmed at Lloyd's Ground in London. They didn't have long lenses in those days, so the players gave demonstrations which could be filmed at close range. You'll notice also that some of them didn't bother with batting gloves on the top hand. Both Clem Hill and Warwick Armstrong later captained the Australian team. And here's Victor Trumper. Just a couple of shots played down on the leg side and a cut. enough to show that he had a high grip and a free, wristy style. There's only one other piece of film of Trumper playing cricket. Clemhill drives and Trumper is run out, and then he walks off, against South Africa at the SCG in 1910. Victor Trumper died of nephritis, a disease of the kidneys, at the age of 37. He was buried in Waverley Cemetery. First-class cricket was suspended during the 1914-18 war, and in fact, no test matches were played between 1912 and 1920. This is the film of the first Sheffield Shield game, played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground after the war. Warwick Armstrong and Jack Ryder leading the Victorian team out to field. They still didn't have lenses which could show close-ups of play, but they've put a border on the image here to make it look like a telescopic view. Here's rare footage of the left-arm leg spinner Bert Ironmonger, who had lost the tops of 2 fingers on his bowling hand. Ironmonger was 50 years old when he played his last test. There doesn't seem to be any film left of the Test series in Australia in 1920-21, but there is film from England of the 1921 Australian tour there. It's of particular interest because it includes virtually the only film of the Australian fast bowler Ted McDonald, who was said to have such a beautiful action. McDonald had only played 11 tests when he moved to England to play league cricket. He was at one stage the highest paid professional cricketer in England. There's also film of Warwick Armstrong in England in 1921. Despite his bulk, he weighed more than 20 stone or about 125 kilograms, Armstrong was a useful bowler. He bowled 127 overs and took 8 wickets during that series. The first coverage of Test cricket in Australia comes from the series against England in the summer of 1924-25. It cost 2 shillings, or 20 cents, to get into the ground then, or 4 shillings if you sat in the stands. "236,000 people came to the second test here at the Melbourne Cricket Ground in January 1925. That's Herbie Collins, followed by Kellaway, Taylor and Gregory. Oldfield's the wicketkeeper, with Warren Bardsley, and Marley and Ponsford at the rear. Jack Gregory bowling. And the leg spinner, Arthur Maley. What a pity there was no sound in those days. These men could have told us about the birth of Test cricket. That's Jack Blackham, who was Australia's wicketkeeper in the first Test match ever played back in 1877. Tom Garrett also played in that game. And so did Charles Bannerman, who made 165 in Australia's first innings, the first century in Test cricket. Blackham, Garrett and Bannerman also played in the famous Oval Test of 1882, the game which gave birth to the Ashes. In February 1923, in only his third first-class innings, Ponsford had made the then world record score of 429 for Victoria against Tasmania. He made 128 in Australia's first innings in this game, which Australia won by 81 runs. The caption may seem sentimental, but Australians still referred to England as home in the 1920s. The Australasian Gazette was one of the first newsreel companies operating in Australia. The Gazette filmed the Sheffield Shield match between New South Wales and South Australia, played at the Sydney Cricket Ground in January 1926. Shield games were played to a finish during the 1920s. This game lasted for 8 days. Herbie Collins was the Australian captain in the mid-1920s. Clary Grimmett, born in New Zealand, was the leading leg spin bowler of the time. And Warren Bardsley was an established opening bat for Australia. England came out to Australia again in 1928-29, and the first test was played on the old exhibition ground in Brisbane, which they used before the Gabba. This was also Don Bradman's first test. He made 18 in the first innings and only 1 in the second. There isn't actually any film of him batting, but there is film of some of the established players of the time. Kellaway to Chapman. Gregory to Patsy Hendren. That's Morris Tate going out to bat, Gregory bowling. And Gregory to Tate again. Bill Woodfull and Bill Ponsford, Australia's opening batsmen. Larwood to Woodfull, who was caught by Chapman. Tate to Ponsford. Tate to Kippax. Larwood to Ponsford again. And Larwood to Ryder. Australia was caught on a wet wicket in the second innings and lost the test by 675 runs. They used to put the scores up outside the newspaper offices. Bradman was 12th man for the second test, but was back in the 11 for the third test, and there he made a century. And he made another century in the fifth test, played in Melbourne, as did England's Jack Hobbs, playing his last test match in Australia. Wall bowling to Hobbs. And Hornibrook to Hobbs, another single. This was before Bradman had made his name, and Jack Hobbs was regarded as the game's greatest batsman and, apart from W.G. Grace, probably the greatest player ever. Hobbs went on to make 142, and when Australia batted, both Woodfull and Bradman made centuries. Here's Bradman facing Harold Larwood. Australia won the fifth test, but England had won the first 4 tests of that series. The game and the leading players were popular subjects for early cinematographers. Charles McCartney's test career had finished in 1926, but he's among the game's legends. Arthur Marley had played his last test too when this film was made in 1928. But the wicketkeeper, Bert Oldfield, 35 years old, was to play for another 8 years. Although he was younger than players like McCartney and Oldfield and Maley, Don Bradman knew them and saw them play and played cricket with them.
My father took me down to see 2 days play in the 5th Test match in 1921 at the Sydney Cricket Ground. And it just so happened in that game that Charlie McCartney made 170 at one of the finest innings he ever played in Test cricket, and I was very excited about watching him because he was a magnificent batsman. Very aggressive, very pugnacious, and I think he was one of the all-time great batsmen that we ever had, a wonderful player. Well, that, of course, is a film of Arthur Maley. Looks very much to me as though it was taken on the Sydney Cricket Ground number 2. I think Arthur Maley and Fleetwood Smith probably spun the ball more than any other 2 players that I saw. But, of course, the more spin you put on the ball, the more difficult it is to control it. Legend tells you that he bowled a full toss on purpose occasionally to get a man out. I very much doubt that. I think the full tosses he bowled were by accident rather than by design. There are lots of funny stories about Arthur Maley. He was a most whimsical character, and he loved telling stories about himself. He was on the boat going to England on one occasion. The story is that he was dancing with a nice girl, and she said to him, "Mr. Maley, do you like being on your feet?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, would you mind getting off mine?" He was a wonderful humorist, and I think one of the finest black and white cartoonists that I ever saw. His cartoons were in the paper almost every day and usually depicted something that had happened in the match the day before, and everybody looked forward to seeing them each morning. Well, that's a fine shot of Jack Gregory bowling. You wouldn't find many pieces of film of Jack these days. I would say Jack in those days was as fast as anyone playing the game today. He was really very fast, and he was a magnificent bowler. In fact, Jack was one of the great all-rounders of the world. He came back to Australia with the 1919 AIF team, and they played matches against the States as they went round Australia. When they got to New South Wales, they played the New South Wales team on the Sydney Cricket Ground, and Jack opened the batting, made 100 in each innings, opened the bowling and took 8 wickets, and took 3 magnificent slip catches. And that is a great performance in anyone's language. That's a demonstration that was given by Archie on the Sydney Cricket Ground number 2. I don't think Archie Jacks never saw Trumper play. But what I believe did happen was that Alan Kippax was very much influenced by watching Trumper, and Jacks in turn then was influenced by Kippax. I think that was the progression. I never saw Trumper play, so I've got no idea what he was like, but they all tell me that he and Kippax were very much the same. So I think the 3 of them were in the same stylish mould. It's very hard to define. It's a bit like a ballet dancer. You see somebody on the stage and they look absolutely beautiful. But why they look so much better than somebody else is pretty hard to define. But they were certainly very attractive in their styles. They had a very high grip on the bat handle. Looked very high by modern standards. But he certainly was a beautiful player to watch. All his shots were very graceful.
Archie Jackson and Don Bradman both began their Test careers against England in 1928-29, Jackson with a glorious century in Adelaide. But he had tuberculosis. He was to go to England with the Australian team in 1930, but by the time the English team arrived for the 1932-33 season, he was in and out of hospital, and he died in February 1933. Clary Grimmett, the Australian spin bowler, was also a keen photographer. He took this film in Europe and England with the Australian team in 1930. And this is newsreel film. It's also the earliest film of Australian cricket with contemporary sound that I've been able to find.
There are the Australian team, captained by Mr. Woodfall, going out to field. This is the first match of their tour.
Major Jewell and Wright are now at the wickets. Grimmett is bowling. Grimmett is Australia's famous googly. He's full of tricks. Hornibrook bowling, one of the new men.
I remember very well indeed playing against Worcester, and it was my first sample of an English pitch, and of course being young and inexperienced I was very excited to get the opportunity to play under those conditions.
Australia are batting now. Woodfall's opening the innings. Woodfall being the Australian captain. This is Archie Jackson, the youngster, you know.
Yes.
Made a century in his first test against us in Australia.
Oh, yes. I like his style very much.
Yes, he's playing very cautiously. It's his first time on an English wicket.
Oh, yes. That's a lovely stroke.
Another newcomer to English cricket, Don Bradman. Holds the world's batting record.
English pitches are softer underfoot than the Australians. The soil doesn't bed down as hard as our black soil does, and normally the pitches have a little more grass on them. At the end of the day's play, if you have a look at the pitch, you can usually see where almost every ball has landed. Just leaves a very tiny little indentation, and a little bit of the green grass has been bruised. You wouldn't see that very often in Australia. But personally, I liked them. The ball came off a bit slower, gave you more time to play your shots. I think you couldn't relax in England as much as you could in Australia because the ball was always liable to do something.
The great cricket battle between England and Australia has commenced. Chapman has won the toss for England and decided to bat first. England have started with our famous opening pair, Hobbs and Sutcliffe. Hobbs is batting now. He's playing very steady, you know, today. Yeah, look at that. He's Hammond batting again now. Oh, how's that? Now he's out. Before wicket there. Yes. That's Hammond gone, LBW, eh?
That's bad luck, isn't it?
That's Woolley.
Bert Oldfield is the wicketkeeper.
I say.
Got him first ball.
Oh, that's too bad,
Gone, that's too bad. England's total 270. Robbins carried his bat for 50, not out. Australia opened their innings with Woodfall and Ponsford. Larwood is bowling at Woodfall. Tate bowling. Oh, beautiful. Oh, lovely. He looks very dejected, doesn't he, as he's walking out. This is young Don Bradman. Oh, he started well.
Very well.
Stroked a leg.
England won the first test by 93 runs, but Australia drew level at Lord's, where Woodfall made 155 and Bradman 254.
Geo Allen facing Grimmett, wanting one for his 50.
King George V. He took a close interest in the cricket.
Run wanted now for the match. They've got it. Australia wins the match by 7 wickets. Woodfull is being cheered now by the crowd. There seems to be quite a large Australian contingent here too, to judge by the reception.
At Leeds, in the 3rd Test, Bradman made 334, but that test was drawn, and so was the 4th Test. So they came to the Oval for the 5th Test, with the Ashes in the balance.
Australia's opening pair going out to bat. Larwood bowling the first ball to Woodfull. Larwood's second ball. He's knocked him for a single. Ponsford's first ball from Larwood. He's knocked him for a couple nicely.
Ponsford 98 playing Peebles. There's 90, there's his 100.
Bradman playing Peebles. He's just sneaked a single which gives Australia a double century. Bradman batting.
Jackson playing Peebles. Got that one well away.
Bradman went on to make 232, and Australia won the Test by an innings and 39 runs. The vice-captain on that 1930 tour, Victor Richardson, was the grandfather of the Chappell brothers.
Mr. Woodfull had a lot to say in introducing the members of this side. Of course, he naturally, with his modesty, couldn't say anything about himself. But I'm just going to tell you all what a wonderful performance that Bill Woodfull has put up in this tour of ours. He has not only been captain of the side, but his performances with the bat and in the field have been just simply marvellous. He's gone in first, taken the brunt of the bowling, and has always made a way for the other batsmen who have followed afterwards to make big scores in these test matches. We can't tell you how much we appreciate his efforts on our behalf in this country.
We have made hosts of friends in the old land, and those members of the side who will be fortunate enough to get a place to tour England in 1934 will no doubt look forward to renewing old acquaintances. Cheerio, everybody.